All right, sixth graders, now we're going to look at the third and final measure of center given a data set, and that is called mode. Mode is the data value or values, sometimes there's more than one mode, that shows up the most often. So mode is the most often showing up one. So MO helps me remember most often. So which value or values show up the most often? Don't confuse it with most, the biggest number, but the most often occurring number. Which one do you see the most? So what is the mode of the data set? So which number do you see the most often? Now, you don't have to put these numbers in order like you do for median, but I think it helps a lot with counting how many times a number shows up. So for mode, even though I'm looking for what shows up the most often, it's easiest to see that when they're in order. So I'm going to take and put the 2 3s and then the 4 and then followed by 5 and 10. Now that they're in order, I can see 3 shows up twice, everybody else only shows up once. So the mode for this data set is 3. 3 shows up the most by showing up twice. The mode is 3. 3 shows up the most often number of times. All right, look at example 2. Your basketball team plays 5 games, so you have 5 numbers. Your team scores 10 points in the first game, 3 points in the second game, 2 points in the third game, 5 points in the fourth game, and 0 points in the fifth game. So they started off really well and then got tired, I guess. What is the mode number of points your team scored for all 5 games? So let me write these numbers out. We had 10, 3, 2, 5, and 0. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games, 5 numbers. The mode is the one number or numbers that show up the most often. So I'm going to put these numbers in order. So 0 is my lowest, then 2, then 3, followed by 5, and then 10. Now that they're in order, I can see 0 shows up once, 2 shows up once, 3 shows up once, 5 shows up once, and 10 shows up once. Well, there's nothing special. Every number shows up once. So what can we say about the mode? There is no mode. So for this one, we say there's no mode. Now some kids want to say the mode 0 because there isn't one. But 0 is a number, and 0 shows up once, just like 2 and 3 and 5 and 10. So when there is no number that shows up the most because they all show up once, there's no mode. So sometimes there is no central value of most often number because everybody shows up once. All right, look at example 3 here. Example 3 says, what is the mode? So which number shows up the most in this data set? So again, I'm going to put these numbers in order because I see there's a bunch of 6s, but I see a couple 7s. So which one shows up the most? So if I put them in order, so there's a 2 and a 3. Then there is, let's see, 1, 2, 3 6s. So 1, 2, 3, and then there are 2 7s, followed by an 8 and a 9. So if I look for the most often occurring number, 6 shows up 3 times, 7 only shows up twice. So the mode, what number shows up the most often? It's 6. 6 shows up the most number of times. It shows up 3 times. 7 shows up only twice, and all the other ones only show up once. So 6 is the mode. All right, one more, example 4. What is the mode of the data set? So which value or values show up the most number of times and the most often in this data set? So once again, I'm going to put my numbers in order from least to greatest. It helps me see how many times every number shows up at a glance. So my first, let's see, 3 shows up 1, 2 times. 4 shows up once. Then I have a 5. I have, let's see, 1, 2, 3 7s, followed by 1, 2, 3 8s. So now I can see 7 shows up 3 times, and 8 also shows up 3 times. 3 shows up twice, and 4 and 5 each show up once. So what number shows up the most? There's 2 of them, you're right. 7 and 8 are the mode. So the mode, I can list more than one. That does not happen with mean. That does not happen with median. It can only happen with mode. And mode is still special. You can, what number shows up the most? You can say there's no mode. All the numbers show up the same number of times. There's one value. There's 2 values. There's 3 values. You can't list more than 3. So for mode, sometimes it's just one number. Usually it's one number, but there are times where you can list up to 3 numbers. If you want to list more than 3 numbers, you're actually going to say there's no mode because it's not special anymore. And that takes us to the end of mode. So you're going to see some questions reviewing mean, median, and the mode.